In our last episode of the guided playthrough, we broke down the importance of alt recipes, turning 2.5 gigawatts of fuel from 300 oil into 10 gigawatts. And today we're going to use that knowledge to greatly boost the production of plastic using a mix of alt recipes that will triple the plastic that we get from crude oil, so that we can get started planning the perfect supercomputer factory for the next episode. Which means we'll also need to scout out the best location for our facility and create a train line that's both simple, elegant and quick to set up so that anyone can easily transport resources between biomes. The only issue is I've made a terrible mistake that's already hindered today's progress, but more on that shortly. Now, if you are new to the series, our aim is to go from the very start of the game through to the end and breaking down each section into bite-sized chunks so that you will never feel overwhelmed, and sharing with you a load of tips and tricks along the way. So if it is your first time here, do check out the rest of the playlist in your own time. But without further ado, let's cover what we're going to be doing in today's video timestamps so that you can skip ahead to what's important to you. First, we're going to be covering my most stupid mistake yet, and one that I'm all too familiar with. And once I've fixed the problem, we'll scout out the next location for our future facility. And once happy with the spot, we'll get started creating a train blueprint that will make building railways easier than ever before. And then finally, we'll be getting started on the plastic facility, covering the basic recipe that we're already using, and then the alt recipes that you'll need to greatly improve your production rates. And once we've set up the new facility, we'll also go over the layout so that you can replicate this, should you wish, in your builds. So, let's get started. Now, despite me having many hours in Satisfactory, I do occasionally make mistakes. I am not fallible in that regard. And the biggest one that I've made recently is, you may have remembered in the last episode, we built a massive diluted fuel plant. Oh, my nut is disappearing there.
What did he say?
You may remember in the last episode we built this diluted packaged fuel plant producing 10 gigawatts, but we also built a blended diluted fuel plant, which is no longer there. And I have to admit that I saved over the file while doing thumbnails the other day. So we are 10 gigawatts down, and I do not have the recipe to rebuild it. So I have a choice here. I can either build the diluted packaged fuel plant again, which is a bit of work, but it's doable. And that way we'd have the full 20 odd gigawatts of power. Or we can choose to just leave it, and we will work on it when we get the blend diluted fuel. Or the other thing, a little fact that I didn't realize until today, is if you have a blueprint saved, which we do, we can actually place these blueprints down. So let me just grab that one. And providing the recipe is saved within the building, you can then use it. I'm not sure I want to do that. It feels a little bit cheaty to me. But given we do have a load of power available, it might just be better for us to... I wonder why that's dipping. It might just be better for us to get started on the next facility. Because we've got a lot to get through today. Just make sure that you're not reliant on autosaves or forget to save your game, because that's taken us back about 4 hours in total. You know what? I'm going to really quickly double this up. I might as well. It'll take me, I say really quickly, about an hour, but I'll also try and fix this power line really quickly. I have a funny feeling it might be from over there. And in the meantime, I'm going to research a load of hard drives because we're going to need a load of alt recipes for today's video. So give me 2 moments.
A few moments later.
Okay, so an hour later we finally have the setup running. We are using just the packaged refineries, and they are going to take a little bit of time to warm up and fully run. So whilst that's on the go, we need to work out where we're going to be building our facility. And though we could just spam power lines all over the place, I quite like to use the jetpack when exploring, and it will be more beneficial to use things like the packaged biofuel or the turbo fuel if you have access to that over the normal fuel, but we're going to make it work nonetheless. So we're going to take about 300, and I'm also going to replace the canisters that I'm taking, because otherwise this will never get up to full capacity. So we're going to want to build computers, which you can see with the base recipe here needs plastic plus plastic for the circuit board and a bit of copper to produce. We then have the super computers, which if we look on here, we're going to need some Caterium alongside plenty of plastic and a bit of copper. So really, what we're going to be looking for this next build is somewhere with lots of oil available, but also some copper and ideally Caterium nearby. So we're going to head over to the Spire Coast, because I think that's going to be the perfect location for the next facility. And here we are. This here is the entrance to the Spire Coast, and it is probably, in my opinion, the most beautiful of all the biomes in the game. It's just gorgeous. And if you're looking for power shards, this is the perfect area for them. We've already grabbed a few from here, but look at this. There is plenty of room. And what I'd love to play around with in probably my actual playthrough, or my let's play, rather than the guided one, would be to build a facility that incorporates the terrain. It's a little bit more difficult to show you build layouts if they're all intertwined with the nature, so we won't do that here. But here there is a ton of oil. Yeah, you can see some there, some there. Those are shadows. And there's also some more behind us, if I remember rightly. In fact, we can check. But when searching for the perfect spot, we have a few options. We can either go where the oil is, so we've got a few here, there's a load down there, or we could go where the other resources are, which is copper. I don't think there's that much around here. We might have to look at the... Oh, that's a new one. There's a good few on this cliff. It's 2 pure ones. This was the perfect starting spot when the game first released, but since then there have been better options available. But we're also looking for Caterium, and I think the only one nearby is over here. Yeah, this one. Oh, there's one over here as well. Here we are. This is the oil node that we're going to be using. This is a pure one, which means we're going to have plenty of oil to use, and we may not even need to use all of it today. But by having it down here and bringing the copper and Caterium down, we're going to save ourselves a lot of headaches later on. So we're going to start prepping this area for the plastic factory, and then when we start planning out the big facility in the next episode, highly recommend watching that one, because we're going to go into depth into the planning phase of building a bigger factory. But for that, we're going to want to think about where we're going to be bringing the copper and the Caterium, and also where we want to produce maybe the Caterium ingots. All of that will come in the next episode. But for now, we need to go back to base, start prepping a train line, and also work out what alternates we're going to need to use. Now, we have already covered building railways in Satisfactory, both in different guides and also in the guided playthrough series. And though we have quite a nice little railway system here, I've noticed that a lot of people are a bit scared of trying to set up these rigid railways. As such, today we're going to be working on a blueprint which will make it really easy for anyone to build railway systems. So let's get started. The whole concept around the railway that we're about to build is for ease of building. We want this to be quick and easy, and basically it will be a train line that will connect biomes together. And so within each biome, like this one, we'll have a railway, much like you see here, and this will feed all of the facilities in this biome. However, we want one main highway that will link this to different biomes. This is one of many ways that you can do trains in Satisfactory, and I'm not looking to transport in this playthrough lots of resources between biomes. As such, having a dedicated highway and then independent railway sections for each biome should work perfectly for us. But if you want, you can do a railway that goes through all the biomes. It's just going to require a fair bit more work. With that in mind, what we're going to be doing here is just setting up a railway line based solely on supports. So we're going to grab ourselves our double ramp. I'm going to lift it up from here, and we're going to do the same on this side as well. I quite like the idea of having something a little bit like this. Now you can go bigger if you want, or you could go smaller. But basically all we're going to be doing here is building a single support. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time just decorating this, because it is going to be what's holding our railway together. I'm going to bring that down. And for this, you want at least 2 wide foundations. However, for here, I'm going to use 3 wide. And then we're also going to want to bring it out at least 2 long as well. Yeah, that should do for us. We're going to grab ourselves our railway piece. We're going to place this on the end there, on the end of that. We're going to run it from one edge to the other here as well. This is just a very basic design. I'm going to now spend a little bit of time sprucing this up, and I'll show you once it's done. Okay, and here we are after a little bit more work. And how this is going to work is all we need to do is place down one blueprint, and then when we have a few more resources, what we can do in Blueprint Auto Connect is click once in order to connect them. Then we can run this to where we want. So immediately you can see how easy it will be to start building a railway line. So we will find a spot where we're comfortable with. So perhaps we do it now over here. We would lift it up slightly, and then from here we would place it on top, and then we would place that down, and we would connect everything to this over to where we're going to go. And we'll probably keep this to the world grid. I don't tend to use the world grid, and I'll talk about that in a later episode. Or if you're interested in knowing about that now, I'll put a link to that particular video, if I remember, in the description below. But I'm going to have to go and get some resources, and then I'll start placing these down and connect everything all together. However, before we head over there, I do want to quickly go over the alt recipes. So let's find ourselves a MAM. And we are at the MAM. Now for this particular build that we're going to be doing, we will compare the basic recipe and this recipe in terms of production in a moment. But first I wanted to go over the recipes. Speaking of which, we're going to need a few. It's a much bigger production line, but it produces a lot more resources. Now the first recipe that you're going to want to have unlocked is the heavy oil residue alternate recipe, which we covered in the last episode. On top of that, we're going to need the packaged fuel, or if you have the blend fuel unlocked, unfortunately we don't, you'll be using that one because it's going to save you a lot more time. Along with that, we need 2 other recipes. We need the alternate recycled plastic, and this burns off fuel and combines it with rubber to produce extra plastic. So this is the first one that we need. And the other one we need is the recycled rubber. And we've got 8 chances here to unlock it. So fingers crossed we will find it. Unfortunately, it's not looking too good. I hope this isn't a repeat from the other day. Nope. Ah, fantastic. That was, I was beginning to panic. So it's this one here which we are now going to unlock. And we can get started on building our train line. I don't think we're going to connect it to this segment, but in case we do, I want to make sure that we have some room to create a junction if need be. So I'm just going to knock out these trees. And because this is already on the world grid, I'm just going to place it. We're going to do the same on this side and make sure it's the same height before we grab our first support. Now that is in line. The next thing that I'm going to do is just blend this into the build. And then over here, we're going to do the exact same thing. And we want to make sure that it's along the same line. So I'm actually going to run this all the way across to this section here, and then along here. You don't need to do this, but I prefer to keep things all on the same grid if I am using the world grid. And from here, remember in auto, we need the concrete. Now we can grab this, set it to blueprint auto connect, and we're going to place it. And we are still short on concrete. Wonderful. I should have grabbed another one. But we're going to place it just on top. And this should, it's too long. So we're going to have to push it back a touch anyway. And this is how we're going to do the main line, the highway line, to connect over to the Spire Coast. And for now, this is just going to be used by myself. So we will add a train station. And then maybe a roundabout just above this. So if we want to expand it and go down that way, we can. Okay, so we've been making quite a bit of progress. You can see we're running this all the way around. I've just noticed there's a dip. Oh well, too late now, I'm not redoing it all. But I've just thought of an idea. This particular train line actually runs all the way along and up to the exact cliffside where there's a load of resources. So what we will probably do is run those resources from a train down to the place where we're about to start building. I know that we don't want to connect a lot of trains along this between biomes, but it just seems to work very, very well. I knew that was going to happen. With us stopping here and the copper that we need being just there. Oh, and the Caterium just there. Anyway, we are making good progress. We're going to run this, I think, across here now, and then down into the Spire Coast. Thinking about it, it might have been better to run the line across there. Oh well. Anyway, it has taken us a couple of hours to get the highway in order across the 2 biomes, but I'm pretty happy with how it looks. It is higher up, which unfortunately does mean that it looks a little bit daunting across the biomes, especially in the Spire Coast, but providing we build up the facility around this, that shouldn't be an issue. I've also given us enough room underneath so that we could build a train line in the Spire Coast specifically if we wanted to, but I don't think we're going to need to because mainly it's just the oil that's in the Spire Coast and we'll be wanting to pipe that around. However, I have placed a small train station, just the entrance for now, down where the oil node is. So just the other side, specifically because we want the power from the train line. But if we do choose to use this for the other resources, we can quite easily just attach 1 or 2 freight stations behind this and bring those resources in. So let's talk plastic. Now, if I quickly jump over to Satisfactory tools, you can see with 300 crude oil, we can produce the vanilla recipe plastic to produce 200 plastic per minute with 100 heavy oil residue excess, which in the other facility, you'll remember we're burning off to create fuel. Well, if we want to greatly increase the amount of work that we put into this facility, you can see that if we take 300 crude oil, we can now combine that with the heavy oil residue recipe, which we unlocked in the last episode, if I remember rightly. And from there, we will need to take the polymer resin excess, which normally we just sink, and we're actually going to turn that into residual rubber. This is the base rubber recipe that is available to us that uses the polymer resin and water to produce rubber. That's going to be really useful because what we can then do, if I just move these out the way slightly, we can then take that rubber and send that over to the refineries to combine with fuel to produce plastic. However, to do that, we need to do the same process that we did in the last video, producing fuel, and we're going to be producing the diluted packaged fuel, allowing us to produce a total of 800 fuel per minute. This is where it gets interesting. The unpackager is going to unpackage that 800 fuel, and it's going to be split between a refinery producing the recycled rubber and also the refineries producing the recycled plastic. However, in order to maximize the amount of plastic, we need to burn some plastic off to produce the rubber, to burn off the rubber in the refinery producing that recycled plastic. So there is a fair amount of work in this. We've got to do a set of 13 diluted packaged fuel refineries, or 14 if you include the underclock. So that will be split between two lines so that we're producing 400 on each one. And then we're going to have to also have 19 refineries for the plastic, 8 refineries for the recycled rubber, as well as 10 refineries starting this all off, and the 5 refineries producing the rubber from the polymer resin, and of course 1,000 water. So I guess you could say this is our first big factory that we're going to be doing. It really isn't that big, but compared to what we've been doing so far, it is pretty big. But you can see from here, we're producing 900 plastic from 300 crude oil. So that's 3 times the amount of crude oil to produce. We're producing plastic, which is actually considerably more than that 200 plastic we have there. And that's going to be really beneficial to us. So first things first, we need to work out the build. Let's get back to the game. For this, we're going to need to harvest the oil, but we're going to keep this all at ground level for the time being. For this build, we only need water and oil, which is going to make this a lot easier for us. And we're going to build probably across most of this area. So let's grab some power and we'll start doing the same plotting that we've done in the previous videos. Once we've built this up just a little bit, I think we're going to lift it up so that we're not needing to worry too much about the coral. Okay, we're going to get started with what we've got here. And the first thing that I wanted to show you is a little trick when it comes to miners and oil extractors. Now you can see this is pretty low. If we place this down, it's going to be poking through, which maybe that's fine. Maybe you want that. If so, go ahead, do it. But another thing that you can do is place foundations over the top, and providing it's low enough, you can place the extractor on top of there. Now I know it feels a bit weird having a pump digging through concrete, so let's sort that out. The next thing that we're going to do is grab ourselves a barrier, and then from here we're just going to hold control and snap it to the front, and then we grab our foundation and we're going to place this on top. We don't need to worry too much about this because all we're going to do is remove them, and then we're going to place behind it some foundations. I'm going to go with the half foundations for this, and I'm going to do the same here. and on this side too. Then I will remove this and I'm going to place down the original foundations. This is just so that we're back on the grid that we need to be. And I'm going to take our tier 2 pipe and I'm going to go into straight mode. And then from here, we're just going to snap it slightly further on the main grid. And there you go. You've got a nice little section that's cutting into the oil beneath. And what you can do, if that's not quite cutting it for you, you can maybe place down some pillars and then after that add some fencing. So we'll place that there like so. And there you go, a nice clean way to add your extractors to any build. As it stands, this is going to produce 240 crude oil per minute. So we are going to overclock this to 300. And if we want, we can overclock it more later. Let's just hook that up. And then we're also going to connect them together. And we are now left with this section. I've added this here because of the coral. What we'll probably do is add the water the other side and collect it. Or we could do it up here. It's 1000 water, which is the equivalent of about 9. Okay, so not quite 9, 8.5 maybe, just under. So it's going to be quite a few extractors. And we have this space here. Now, the first thing that we need to do is to have space for the 10 refineries for heavy oil residue. And I think we could probably do that, if I'm honest, along here. So we've got 10. So we have, yeah, a fair amount of room there for that. In fact, I'm going, is it that one? Ooh, we need a bit more space. But that's fine. I think we could probably add an extra line here without too many issues. Yeah, so that we'll give it one more, but that should be enough for the 10 heavy oil residue refineries. From there, we're going to need 5 residual refineries. That's going to take the polymer resin. Now, if I remember rightly, the polymer resin flows down the line, so it would end up this side, and we need to combine the polymer resin with 200 water and into 5 refineries to produce that residual rubber. I'm gonna see if I can just drop this section down. So this is going to be the rubber. What can we do for, I tell you what, let's change that to heavy oil residue. That purple color. Then we're going to use the carbon for the refineries producing the rubber, which should be 1, 2, 4 is 3, 4. Yeah, that should be more than enough. We'll actually throw in an extra line. That looks good to me. And then we've got the bigger section. This is going to need 13 of these. So 7 on each side, which looks like from the get-go we're going to need a bit more space. Ooh, we might be just okay with the amount of space that we've got here. So we could potentially do these, and then we just need to make sure that we've got enough space for 7. I think it'll be a squeeze, but I think it's going to work. So we'll do all of this for producing the heavy oil, producing the diluted packaged fuel. It would have been so much easier if we used the blender blueprint, but we're not going to do that because we haven't got that blend fuel unlocked, thanks to my little faux pas after the last episode. And that leaves us with another section which needs to house 19 refineries. So let's drop this down and I'll quickly go over all of this. Okay, so we've had to extend it out quite a bit. And the plan will be to have the plastic being produced in this section here. So we needed 19 refineries. So we're just going to run it along here in 2 lines. And it's going to go all the way towards the end here. At the same time, we're going to need to also have the recycled rubber being produced. This is slightly smaller, only housing 8 refineries, because of course there are also another 5 refineries over there with the residual rubber. For that, I think what we're going to do is to actually try and place them underneath here. So I'll try and keep this as clean as possible for you guys to see, and then we may even push it, if possible, under here. So it's tucked into this section here. It's going to be a little bit of a pain to show off on the actual breakdown, but if not, we could always move it out. I just think it'll be quite nice to tuck it underneath so that this doesn't feel like it's too towering. And of course, the last thing is the water. All 1,000 of the water will be coming from over there. So let's start off with the heavy oil residue blueprint that we've got. So we'll place our first line here. We can clean this up after. The second one, so that's 6. Then we'll place the other 4 here. But I need to go back and get some resources quickly. There are some on my train. Okay, so we're back and we've done the 10 refineries with the heavy oil residue, and the next thing that we're going to do is just very quickly run all 5 of them along like that. Well, that's quite neat. And from here we're going to make sure that these are set to the residual rubber, and it's just polymer resin and water. So it's going to be really nice and simple to do. We're going to run the same kind of power line as we've done over there. That way we can connect these up, making the power system, the power logistics really simple. We'll actually cover power logistics in the bigger factories because you can get quite creative with power. And it's one of those things that a lot of people don't like to bother with, but can be really interesting playing around with ways to hide your wires. Using things like cavity walls or power from beneath the build. Let's make sure these are all set, and we will also color these in. And I'm going to really quickly sort out the water and then bring them across. You don't really need to watch me doing that. Okay, so we have our heavy oil residue ready to be produced. We also have our residual rubber. And over here, we now have 10 water extractors underclocked each to 100. So we've got the first 2 there producing 200 water going to the residual setup, and then we have the other 8 producing 100 water each, 400 in each of the other 2 lines, which will go to this section here for the packaged diluted fuel. So let's get started with the packaged fuel. We're going to place our first one. I'm going to make sure that this time we are not in auto connect. So instead we're going to place it on the edge. And I'm going to pull it in so that the edge runs along the center here. And we're going to do this for both lines. So it should fit quite tightly through. What we might do once we're done is add a walkway just across the top here. That might look quite nice. But regardless, we're now going to set all of this up. And once that's done, we will get started with the fun part, which is recycled plastic and rubber. Okay, so we have just got the packaged fuel set up. The only thing I will mention is we didn't quite have enough room. So we have overclocked the last one in the setup on both ends, but that is still producing the fuel that we need, which is now going to go across to our recycled plastic setup. Now, with us only using 300 crude oil, this is actually quite a small setup, though it is quite sizable. But thankfully, that means that we only need to worry about a total of 500 and I think it's 70 rubber on about at any one point, which means we can quite happily run all of this from just a single Mark V conveyor. which is why we're taking the residual rubber from there and we're combining it with what will be another rubber line just over here. So notice that so it's in the right position. And this is going to be 8 refineries. And I'm going to place these without worrying about using blueprints. It's gonna be tight. What we could do is maybe remove this section of the supports for this particular part of the build. It'll be tight, but we might be able to get that to work. So we're going to take our 8 refineries and we're going to start it here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What if we do 4 and 4 actually? And then all of the rubber is going to connect on up with this. However, we also need to send some of the plastic that's going to be produced here into a manifold line behind there. That's going to be a total of 233 plastic. So if we go to the alternate recycled plastic, we can see that that's going to be almost 4 refineries worth. So let me just set up this section and then we'll do the plastic afterwards. But these are all going to be set to the alternate recycled rubber. And one of them does need to be underclocked to 79% clock speed. I will paint these and also connect them up and then we'll get started on the plastic. For this, we're going to need a total of 19 lines. We're going to do 20 and we're going to split it evenly is the plan. Unfortunately, I haven't quite given myself enough room on the inside for all the fuel. So what I'm doing, oh, just realized that one's a bit low. I'm actually folding these underneath. If we were to do it this way, it doesn't quite work. Anyway, needs must, we're going with the best option, which is auto for this. But I'm going to connect all of these up, and then once that's done, we will turn this all on, make sure it's running, and then call it a day. Okay, so these are now all connected. And the last thing that we need to do, there we go, we'll loop this because by the time the fuel has come along here and the fuel has gone along there, we have less than 600 in, say, this section of the build. And so that should balance out. But from here, all we need to do is connect it up to power. And as you can see, these are starting to turn on. Ooh, I forgot one really important thing. This smart splitter is going to overflow the plastic to a sink for the time being. This is our line of what will be 900. Actually, thinking about that, that's not a fast enough line. 900 plastic per minute. That is an issue, but we do need to send the plastic to be sent in there so that we can produce some rubber. And these will start sending rubber all the way to the beginning of the line, filling up all of these so they can run at full speed. Unfortunately, we do need to work out something here. And what's probably best is to do another smart splitter for now. We can worry about this later, but we will send overflow to the left to another awesome sink, because the plastic here is all going to be used hopefully in the next build, which we'll be covering in the next video. So while we're waiting for this to turn on, let's do a quick overview of the whole build. Okay, so here we are. In the bottom left, we have our oil extractor. This is producing 300 per minute of crude oil. That's 125% clock speed on a pure oil node. And that's taking the crude oil and sending it to our 10 heavy oil residue alt recipe refineries, which is sending a total of 200 polymer resin along the conveyor to our 5 refineries on the right hand side there. Those are producing the residual rubber and producing a total of 100 rubber to be sent on to our plastic refineries, which we'll talk about in a moment. From the 10 heavy oil residue refineries, we're also sending all of that heavy oil residue, a total of 400 per minute, to our packaged fuel refinery setup. If you're not sure on how that works, do check out our last episode where we specifically look at the diluted packaged fuel recipe and the blend diluted fuel recipe. However, this setup here with the diluted packaged fuel is producing a total of 566.667 fuel per minute. And that is only possible thanks to the water extractors providing us with 800 water per minute for those refineries. The other 200 water that we're producing from those 10 extractors, all of which are underclocked to 100 water each per minute, are being sent to the residual rubber refineries in the bottom right. With some rubber being sent up to the recycled plastic facility that is at the top of the facility, it's the 20 blue refineries in the top. We're able to start producing plastic, which is made by combining the rubber and fuel together to produce that plastic. However, we are then sending plastic from our production lines to our recycled rubber line over in the left-hand side. And that's producing rubber from combining fuel with the plastic we're producing to produce more rubber, which is then being fed and merged back with the residual rubber line to produce more plastic for us, allowing us to turn that 300 crude oil into a total of 900 plastic per minute. All of this is going to be needed for our next build though, which we'll be planning and setting up in the next episode of our guided playthrough series, where we'll be breaking down the whole process of planning a big factory. Not quite on the scale of mega factory, but still rather big. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do hit the thumbs up and let me know what you'd like to see us produce after the supercomputers in the next episode. But until next time, special thanks as always does go to all of our supporters on Patreon who make content like this possible. Most notably our Lunar Eclipse patrons, Fireflesh the Calamity, Ben and Star, and now Bloodmoon of the Day, which today is Papa Snoozy. But until next time, as always, ciao for now.